Evidence Not Seen, Darlene Deibler Rose. My turn came. The bearer of the letter was a Japanese naval admiral. He spoke excellent English and had spent some time in America. He had been quite impressed by Annapolis. He was dressed in an immaculate white dress uniform and was very polite and friendly. When he told me how much he had enjoyed visiting with Russell and handed me a letter from him, I felt he was not being sneaky or simply polite. He seemed genuinely concerned about our welfare. Did we have enough to eat? Could he get anything for us? There was none of the rudeness or bravado we had previously experienced. He didn't even mention the war. As soon as he was gone, we devoured my letter. It was similar in content to Ernie's. They were getting rice to eat. Rumors had it that they were to be moved to Para, a coastal town approximately 100 kilometers north. They had heard that military POWs were to be imprisoned in the police barracks after the civilians were evacuated. There had been women in the prison who were to be transferred to Molino. "I'm so concerned about you. I wish 1,001 times I had taken you away from here." This was the P.S. that closed his letter. I could understand his concern. This was war. Many immoral Japanese soldiers took advantage of women who couldn't protect themselves or be protected by their husbands. We prayed for peace of mind and heart for both Russell and Ernie and an assurance that we were safe in God's protective custody. Even though a Japanese officer had brought my letter, Russell had written freely about their expected move to Para. Fearful lest one of the booty-hunting soldiers discover my missive, I hid it on top of the plasterboard that served as a ceiling. I was afraid they might punish Russell for contacting me. The admiral might by then have shipped out of Makassar. I had no way of proving how I had received the letter. One day, needing to reread Russell's letter to see his handwriting again, I clambered up to remove it from its hiding place. To my dismay, it was gone. I felt around. No letter. I was terrified. Had one of the looters found it? I yelled for Margaret to come hold a chair on top of a step stool so that I could climb up into the dark, unfinished attic. I was very careful to crawl around on the crossbeams, feeling with my hands over every inch of the ceiling. Perspiration started to trickle down my cheeks. Oh God, what happened to my letter? If it's here, help me find it. My hand came down on a crumple of paper sheltering some baby rats. A mother rat had shredded my letter to make a nest for her litter. I eased my way back across the crossbeams, firmly clutching the pieces of Russell's letter and the bare pink bodies. They had to be destroyed separately, but I felt great relief when the last shred of paper disappeared down the toilet. No one would ever find it now, and I knew the letter by heart, so it wasn't really lost to me. I thanked the Lord and promised that if I ever got another one, I'd destroy it as soon as I had committed it to memory. Margaret was extremely careful with the food she prepared for her father because of Dr. Jaffrey's diabetic condition. We had stockpiled saccharin to substitute in every recipe that called for sugar. One afternoon, Dr. Jaffrey, Margaret, and I walked down the road as far as we were allowed to go. Returning and feeling somewhat exhausted, Dr. Jaffrey sank into his chair and suggested that we have a cup of tea before we started the evening meal. Margaret prepared tea and set the tray on a small table near her father. He helped himself to milk, and instead of taking saccharin, he picked up the sugar bowl and spooned 1, 2, 3 teaspoons of sugar into his tea. I couldn't believe my eyes, and Margaret was horrified. "Oh, Daddy," she pleaded, "please don't do that. You know you aren't supposed to have sugar." Understanding her strong feelings, prompted by love, and the still fresh in her mind memory of his most recent coma, he tried to reassure her. "Muggy, I'm healed. I need the sugar for strength." He continued to use sugar, and when she begged that he not use so much, he patted her hand, saying, "It's all right, Muggy, I'm healed." Not too many days later, Lexji Kandu, the young son of the Makassar pastor, arrived in Bententanji with food for us. "Lexji," I said, "do you think there is any way you could get a urine specimen to the Dutch doctor in Molino? For several days now, Dr. Jaffrey has been using sugar. He believes the Lord has healed him, but we would like the doctor's confirmation." We don't want you to get in trouble because of this. What do you think? You give me the specimen and I'll get it to the doctor in Nonja. I'll need some of the vegetables back so that the Japanese will think I brought them into Milano for the market. We did as he asked, then commended him to the Lord for protection. This was a dangerous undertaking, but he was a very brave teenager. A few days later, a friendly native brought a letter from the Dutch doctor saying that he had examined the urine specimen and found not a trace of sugar. Dr. Jaffrey had indeed been healed. You see, Muggy, the Lord had healed me. I knew he had. We had a time of praising and thanking the Lord. He was preparing Dr. Jaffrey for a time when there would be no sacrament, only scant rations of sugar. The Lord is very good to those who put their trust in him. We missionaries came to know one another well because of the fellowship of our sufferings and victories. Despite the separation and difficulties, our imprisonment was a time of private spiritual tutelage and lasting blessing for me. I think often on that which Dr. Jaffrey shared concerning his childhood, his home, his Christian mother, his father, whom he greatly admired, his Bible school days, and the years in South China. Our gardens were maturing and needing weeding. This was in our morning agenda, along with lessons for Bible school and anticipation of the day when war would cease and we could return to our work. Miss Lillian took dictation from Dr. Jaffrey in Chinese for the Bible magazine. Mrs. Jaffrey did beautiful hand sewing. She had profited from her years with her beloved Chinese. She mended everything that was in disrepair. With knitting, tatting, embroidery work, afternoon Bible study, prayer meetings, and our other pursuits, the days passed. Evenings, using candles, Margaret and I read our way through an unabridged set of Charles Dickens. I had spent several hours one morning weeding, and when I stood up to go into the house for lunch, I felt lightheaded and quite ill. I had been wearing a hat, but the sun was exceptionally hot. I knew I had to lie down. When I became delirious and feverish, Margaret ran to get Ruth, who came running with all the paraphernalia of a well-trained RN. My fever was high. I suddenly became conscious of Ruth and Margaret on either side of the bed, others at the door, and Dr. Jaffrey gripping the rail at the foot of the bed. He began to pray. Of this I was very much aware. Lord, you know how terrible it is for all of us when the soldiers come here. Keep them away while Darlene is sick. Don't let them come on the property again and during this time. My fever peaked every afternoon, and I was not allowed out of bed. I really didn't feel like arguing. Where had my strength gone in that one hot morning in the garden? Was it sunstroke? They sent word by Lexi to the doctor in Milano. As before, Lexi carried vegetables to sell to the people of Milano as a legitimate excuse for being on the road. Lexi also shared the news of us missionaries with our friends at the Tabernacle in Makassar. Through Lexi, the doctor said I should remain in bed. He thought it was a type of malaria, though no blood test was taken. I spent 6 weeks in bed before I was free of fever. The first day I got out of bed and dressed, the Japanese came. God had wonderfully answered Dr. Jaffrey's prayer. We received some disturbing news through Lexi. Our friends who kept regular surveillance of the prison had seen Ernie Presswood being taken to a hospital ship anchored in the harbor. Was he being treated for some illness, or did he need surgery? Was he being taken away? Poor Ruth, those were difficult days for her, but at last a clarification reached us. He was suffering from a very serious case of dysentery and had been taken to the hospital ship for treatment. However, by the time the good report reached us, Ernie was back in the police barracks with Russell. Then shortly thereafter it was confirmed the civilian men had been transferred to Parapara. As if to make up for lost time, Benten Tenji became a regular stop for officers escorting women, sometimes children, to Molino. Most of the women were nervous and apprehensive. Some of the women were from countries belonging to the Axis bloc of nations. Even though they had been allowed to remain in their homes, their movements were restricted. Most of the German women had immediately identified with their Dutch husbands and friends. Their sympathies were not with the Japanese. There was, on the part of many of the Dutch, a certain amount of distrust and reserve toward the Germans, who had immediately displayed their large swastika and sat under its shelter. while the Dutch women and children were restricted to the overcrowded, unsanitary conditions and inconveniences of Milano or Makassar prisons. Apparently all women and children were being assembled in one center. On one occasion, we could hear a woman arguing with the Japanese before they got out of the car. She definitely didn't want to come into our house, but the officers were adamant. We could see she had been crying. There's no reason why I should have to leave Makassar. I wanted to stay there, but they wouldn't let me. Tears of anger and frustration spilled over. Diam, shut up. The Japanese officer's order was not effective, for before they were through the door, she was badgering the officers again to take her back to Makassar. Now what was the big attraction in Makassar? I wondered. Perhaps a loved one in prison she wanted to remain close to. She walked again onto the stage of my life at a later date, playing the role of a sinister character involved in fraternizing with the enemy. But many traumatic events and changes were to transpire before that day. Just days later I read the verse, "Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions," Joel 2:28. I closed the book of Joel and arose from my knees. Walking into the hall, I saw before me a partial fulfillment of that prophecy. There before me sat the old man dreaming his dreams. His eyes were closed, but I knew he wasn't sleeping. One hand rested on an open atlas, the other on the arm of the winged chair that had belonged to his father. I knew that by faith he and his Lord were moving down the great chain of islands known as the Netherlands East Indies. Sensing my presence, Dr. Jaffrey looked up and smiled, the smile of one who had had sweet communion with the Lord. I was sure that God had acquiesced to all of Dr. Jaffrey's proposals concerning reaching the lost, for this too was the great burden of the heart of God. How often I had heard Dr. Jaffrey remind the Lord of the verse, "Concerning the work of my hands, command ye me," Isaiah 45:11. I looked down at the very familiar atlas. Had we not traced the rapid advance of the Japanese on its pages? What other places had fallen under their dominion and domination since that fateful day when the island of Celebes had been overrun? His mind was full of warfare too, but not the same warfare that dominated my thoughts. I knelt beside the chair and listened to his dream. "Lassie, this is our task. These are the areas we must enter when this war is over. When this war is over." It was but beginning. How much more of its fear and anxieties, separations, and grim tales of death must we experience before it was over? I suddenly saw Dr. Jaffrey as I had not seen him before, old enough to dream dreams, young enough to see visions. To Dr. Jaffrey, our experiences were but passing events that never altered God's program of reaching the unreached. Never could they mar the old man's dream. With steady hand and the voice of one assured of victory, he traced upon the map our coming campaign. The Natuna and Amambas Islands, Sumatra, ferreting out and mopping up those pockets of satanic resistance in the central and southern districts, the final liberation of the Punans of Borneo's hinterland, Bali, firmly held in the grip of the enemy, would be freed, its iron gates yielding under the onslaught of faith and prayer. He paused to give praise to our commander-in-chief for spiritual battles fought and won in some of the smaller islands, then moved on to Mosul, the Isle of Demons, the Bird's Head of New Guinea, the Whistle Lakes area, the Zwart and Membrano river valleys, down either side of the Carstensz backbone, and at last his finger came to rest over the grand valley of the Valium. This, lassie, is our task. Listen, do you hear it? The sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees. It is the noise of the marching army of young men and women whom God is preparing for the day of spiritual battle and occupation of these areas.